Yes, I'm not clickbaiting you. This game is actually selling for $5,000 on eBay, so let's talk about it. Holy Grails. If you're a video game collector or honestly just a collector of anything at all, you probably have some. These are items that you really want in your collection for one reason or another. They might be rare, they might be interesting, or you might have a connection to them. For example, I always wanted a small PS1 because I had seen one in a store when I was a kid, and 2 years ago I finally found one for cheap in a thrift shop and bought it. And this console is not rare by any means, it's just a normal mod chip PS1, but I wanted one for years and this makes it one of my personal holy grails. But there are also some holy grails that are considered important by the entire community. This is Gran Turismo 2000, a tech demo given exclusively at the PlayStation Festival 2000 before the launch of the actual PS2 console. And it is essentially a super early beta version of Gran Turismo 3. This tech demo caught my attention because of an old internet urban legend that still circulates to this very day, saying that this game is in fact PlayStation 1 code running on a PS2 and that using a patch you can actually run it on a normal PS1. And while you can easily find cracked rows of this patch, you can't find the patch files anywhere on the internet. And the hacker group behind the patch, Best Amiga Dominators, was arrested in 2000 by the Italian police, so it's quite difficult to go and ask them about it. But now let's take a look at one of my most bizarre holy grails, one you could consider trash if you didn't know any better, a Famicom multicard. A $5,000 one. But why is this cartridge so expensive? What does it contain that is so valuable to the entire community?
This is where I'd put
$5,000 Famicom cartridge.
if I had one!
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story of the $5,000 Famicom Bootleg cartridge. Before we go any further, I want to tell you that in this video I will be using the terms NES and Famicom almost interchangeably because the NES is just the Western version of the Famicom and vice versa, the Famicom is the Japanese version of the NES. I'm talking about the same hardware, the only difference being that the NES looks like a VCR and it's fucking slow in Europe. Famiclones, as the name suggests, are Famicom hardware clones, so hardware that can run Famicom games. The first Famiclones were made by a Taiwanese company named TXC, which is now mostly known for making crystal oscillators. No, not crystal meth, that's another thing. TXC was the first documented company to successfully make a Famicom hardware clone, sold under the Microgenius brand. To achieve this, clones were using 1-to-1 copies of the Famicom chips, made by another Taiwanese company named UMC. These were clones of the Famicom CPU and PPU, originally made by Ricoh. And even though they were quite faithful, they weren't perfect. One thing you'll notice on almost every single Famiclone, except the modern FPGA ones, is that the sound isn't exactly right. This is due to the clone CPU inverting 2 cycles and making the sound inaccurate. For example, the Super Mario Bros. Overworld theme should sound like this, but instead sounds like this. This error was then carried over when every single part that made a Famiclone was condensed into a single NES on a chip, leading to the creation of some small clones like the Super Joy 3. How the fuck are they still selling Nintendo 64 controller Famiclones? What you might not know though is that Nintendo's own Ricoh CPU design was in fact a clone. Ricoh's Famicom CPU was based off the MOS 6502 but just slightly modified not to pay any royalties, by removing the binary coded decimal mode. So if you went and bought a Famicom today, which is super easy if you Google 8-bit console, you would end up with a new NES on a chip, which is based off the Microgenius implementation of the Famicom Rico CPU, which is in turn based off the MOS 6502. Computers. But why would anyone buy a Famicom instead of a regular no Microgenius bullshit NES console? Well, Nintendo wasn't selling their consoles in a few places, and some people wanted to profit off of this.
Rodzinna gra komputerowa.
Areas like Russia and Poland never experienced the 8-bit era during the 80s due to obvious political reasons regulating any kind of import. So with the fall of the USSR, thanks to the new and totally unregulated capitalism, I'm saying this like it's some kind of commercial, different entrepreneurs in these countries, even some not related at all with tech, noticed that they didn't really have any kind of video games market, so companies like Dendy in Russia and Pegasus in Poland were born and started importing Microgenius Famiclones, effectively creating the very first home video game industry in their own countries. Did I just end up talking about the Cold War in a fucking Famiclone video? The second reason is simply price. Original consoles were expensive, and some countries like Brazil had local companies manufacture Famiclones as a cheaper, compatible alternative to them. The thing is, Famiclone manufacturing didn't really ever stop. Most of Nintendo's Famicom-related patents expired in 2003, making the clone market even bigger now that's effectively illegal to create a Famiclone. It's still not legal to put Super Mario in those consoles, but... And well, my very first video game console was one of these Famiclones, still made during the grey area period when it was still technically legal to manufacture them, but nobody ever really cared here in Europe. While Nintendo was busy with the Nintendo 64 and Game Boy, a parallel industry was selling this as cheaper alternatives here. We even got commercials of these consoles on TV, boasting their ultra cheap price. My mom used to bring me and my sister a lot of these consoles, and they all had the same games, and they all had the same shitty build quality. There was this time when my sister was playing a game. On one of these Famiclones, she paused it, she went to the bathroom, and when she came back, the console just randomly died without any reason, and she had owned that console for like a few days. That's how low the build quality was for some of these Famiclones. We have talked about Famiclone consoles, now let's talk about Famiclone games. While games released on a single cartridge were a thing, the real universal standard for Famiclone cartridges was multi-carts. These are usually worthless compilations of Famicom games made using the cheapest plastic known to mankind. The various games are usually hacked to fit on a single cartridge, which leads to glitches or just weird stuff happening with them. It's a bit of a mess, and since they were supposed to run on clone hardware, they might have some problems running on normal Famicom consoles. And some emulators like Mezen actually account for this kind of ROMs by adding a dandy mode. When it comes to gaming, this is the bottom of the barrel. And I love it. JY120. This serial number belongs to a multi-cart, but not just any multi-cart. You see, JY stands for JY Company, a bootleg games publisher from Taiwan. They were mostly active during the 1990s, and boy oh boy, I love this company. The pirate market at the time was, of course, the fucking Wild West. Everyone was stealing stuff from each other, that being development tools, sprites, music, or entire games. Hacking other people's games and selling them as your own was just the norm here. But JY was different. Yes, it was a pirate company selling unlicensed games for cloned hardware, but a classy one. You see, JY rarely stole directly from other companies. They really wanted to act like a serious business, except when they published Grand Theft, that was a mistake. And just like EA and Activision had their own studios developing games for them, JY did the same. And the results were quite interesting. They mostly work with two teams, Eyao Jung and the Hammer team. Let's briefly talk about them to get an idea of what we are dealing with. Eyao Jung was a former member of Saken, another bootlegging company which also published games in the US. And after years of working for them, releasing games such as Jurassic Boy 2, so Eyao Jung decides to leave Saken and work on his own, creating his own team, mostly focused on backports. Now, as we said before, Nintendo wasn't selling their consoles in China and in a whole lot of other places. And while during the mid-90s some SNES and Genesis clones were developed, with some being shockingly identical to the real deal, there's this video by Retro Game Tech where he buys a used SNES Junior from eBay, opens it up and discovers it is a perfectly identical clone. Anyway, due to pricing and availability, Famiclones were mostly still the main deal. And of course, people kept wanting new games, so teams like the one led by Eyao Jung started backporting games from the 16-bit SNES and Genesis hardware to the Famicom's 8-bit one. An example of this is their port of Toy Story, later known as High Game 1999 in comic sense. It is a very short port with broken English and only 10 levels, but it gives us an idea of what these kind of ports effectively were. Eyao Jung starts working with JY, and JY publishes one of his backports, Mickey Mania 7, an incomplete but impressive port of the SNES game Mickey Mania: The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse, including stuff like scrolling towers, a swinging rope, 3D boxes. This will be impressive for any NES game, especially one made by pirates with basically no budget, a super tight time schedule and no SDK. So Eyao Jung gets the ball rolling with his backports, getting JY to pay for the development of them. And the reason JY120 is so expensive is because it contains the full version of a very important backport. But while being published by JY, it wasn't made by Eyao Jung's team. Eyao Jung wasn't the only person splitting off from Saken. In fact, a lot of ex-members were starting their own independent game studios. And between them there was Xi Hongguo, the developer of the Saken sound driver, which went on to create Computer and Entertainment, a company mostly known for
Naked ladies, no.
C&D put out a lot of not safe for work games, got sued by Nintendo, which isn't surprising. After this, started making games for the Sega Genesis and then for the PlayStation, where they managed to get their only non-pirate game published, Simulation Zoo, which isn't documented anywhere on the internet. I couldn't find a single gameplay video of it, so I recorded my own and I actually published it to my secondary channel. You can find it in the video description here. So both the Eyao Jung team and C&D split off from Saken, but in 1992 someone actually split off from C&D too, creating the one and only Hammer team. The reason we have a lot of information about the Hammer team is that, unlike other bootleg developers, the leader Amr Chang actually gave us a lot of information in an interview to the PGC forums, leaving us a lot of detail about the development of these bootleg games. And while for normal games it is pretty common to share information about how they were developed, who paid for developing them, it is not normal at all when talking about bootleg games. They are just shrouded in mystery due to being, well, illegal. Before working on JY120, the Hammer team worked on a lot of other projects, including a backport of Street Fighter 2 to the NES, which then was hacked to become Mario Fighter 3. Is that the grandest sprite? They were also the team behind So Mari, a Sonic the Hedgehog backport to the NES, which was hacked so many times I don't have anything to say except family. They were also the team behind Kart Fighter, a game of which I own a physical copy, and it's actually the first game to ever feature Mario characters fighting. It is made using a modified version of the Street Fighter 2 engine from before, and holy shit, I had to own this because it is basically Smash Bros before Smash Bros, and it costs like a peanut on AliExpress, so why not? So, you now have all of this context and you can clearly see why the Hammer team is considered to be one of the best teams to ever commit felony on the Famicom. These guys made a full Aladdin port for the NES, complete with every single level and bonus stage. They know their shit. So we have this Bootleg team with a lot of programming expertise when it comes to backports, and yes, this is their own mascot. You know a Bootleg team is great when they have their own mascot. And you have a publishing company willing to publish original backports. I mean, together they made a port of Tekken to the Famicom. You could expect anything from these guys. But what game is so important that a multi-cart containing its full version is selling for $5,000 on eBay? They ported Super Mario World to the Famicom.
New Super Mario World, created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
They took the defining game of the 16-bit era and ported it to the previous one. But how did they do this, you might say? How did this happen? How did they achieve this? Well, first we need to talk about the development of the original Super Mario World for a second. This game was the main SNES launch title, and its development began by porting the Super Mario Bros. 3 code to the new SNES console, to give the developers a playground to experiment with the new hardware. And one thing became immediately clear: they needed something new. They couldn't just make a Super Mario Bros. 4, it had to be something big. Especially when their main competitor was... Miyamoto decided to expand an idea he was exploring since the first Super Mario Bros., a dinosaur to ride like a horse. This concept will influence the entire game design. It is literally set on a dinosaur land. And it allegedly couldn't have been done on the NES in 1985 since, according to the Nintendo engineers, the system simply wasn't powerful enough to handle such a task. To which Hammer Chang 5 years later replied, You know what, f*** you, we're gonna do it anyways.
I like your style. You make up your own rules just like me.
According to the PGC interview, the development of the Super Mario World backport took an entire year, opposed to the 4 months usually needed for a game, being the most difficult project the Hammer team has ever worked on. The project was a severe undertaking for them, and it required creating from scratch a Mario engine that could actually run the Mario World levels on the Famicom, new graphics, new arrangements for the music, and all of that in a budget a Bootleg company could afford. The Hammer team was composed by 13 people and usually worked on 2 to 3 games at a time. This specific game, as we said before, was published by JY, which greenlit the project and financed it with one caveat. They needed a game soon and they couldn't wait upwards to 1 year for the full development, so a deal was made. There are actually 2 versions of this game. The Holy Grail JY121 is the full version, which was released after a full year of development. But there's also a standalone version which was released earlier. This version is incomplete and it's called Volume 1, to indicate that it's more like a beta than anything else, only going up to the 3rd castle due to the other levels simply being unfinished. If you have seen someone play this game online, they most likely have played this version since it is the most diffused one, even though it is technically the beta version of the game. What we'll be analyzing today is the real, full version, which I played on real hardware, because this is real, it's not CGI. Wait, what the fuck? So how did I end up with a $5,000 game in my hands? Well, it's easy. I didn't. Good night. No, okay, I actually have a physical copy of this game, but a different one. You see, I have been looking for years for an occasion to snag a copy of this cartridge, but every single time I found one, it was either I am a broke student with a small YouTube channel, I can't pay $5,000 for a game. So I just moved on for a while and continued getting more attainable games, until something happened in Poland. Wait, no, I didn't actually go there because of... And also, one night I was bored, and I started doing what every girl does when she is bored, browsing eBay looking for cheap retro deals. When this caught my attention, a Famicom flashcard from Poland that wasn't an Everdrive. These appear to be some kind of DIY cart that was both manufactured and sold by the seller. In the listing there was a list with every game the cart could run, so I obviously tried to search for Super Mario World, but it wasn't there. This cartridge could simply not run it, and that's not a surprise since Super Mario World is using mapper 90, a mapper only used by JY, which is a total pain in the ass to run on flash cards or make cheap repros of, which is the reason why you can't find this game on AliExpress looking for Mario jumps for. Saddened, I just closed my laptop and went to bed. But the next day, curiosity took over. I wanted to know more about this
Krzysiokart.
so I went on Google and tried searching for every possible piece of info I could find about it and its creator. The cart is made by Cree, a Polish NES hacker which grew up, well, playing this. The Pegasus Famiclones had a 168-in-1 multi-cart bundled in with them, and for his high school diploma thesis, Cree decided to design and build from scratch a cart that could run this game and other NES games, actually 95% of the NES library according to his own posts, on a Pegasus Famiclone from a microSD. He essentially created his own flash card from scratch. Jesus Christ, in high school I was killing Half-Life scientists, that's what I did. So this product that is selling is actually a newer revision of that he built later using cheaper and easier to manufacture components. The thing is, after discovering all of this, I also discovered that he's able to make custom repro cartridges of any game you want, basically. He actually says this on his own selling page on Famicom World. So I had a ROM file of the JY120 cartridge in my hands. It's been dumped for years now, and I can extract from that the complete Super Mario World game. And now the question was, could he actually make me a cartridge to play it on real hardware? I mean, Mapper 90 should be possible for someone like him that definitely knows the ins and outs of the NES hardware. So I shot him an email asking exactly this. I crossed my fingers and waited. And, well, yes he could. He had a lot of experience with the mapper, and not only that, but it could make me a 3-in-1 repro with the complete version, the beta version, and an improvement hack made by the Jabu, which is available on ROM hacking. So I sent him 60 euros right away for that and a Quizio card, and
2 weeks later.
After around 2 weeks the package came here, and in it there were the repro card, a Quizio card flash card, and a micro SD adapter to copy the totally not downloaded games. After some through testing, I was able to confirm that the cartridges were indeed working perfectly. I tried playing Super Mario Bros. 3 on it, some Super Mario Bros. Randomizer, Somari, a Japanese political game with Margaret Thatcher. Works great, but what doesn't work is Family, which kinda destroyed me because I really wanted Family in my life. I would love to show you the interior of the cartridges, but they are glued together and I don't wanna open and maybe break them because I actually need them for this video and to, you know, play the games that are in there. Cree really fears Chinese reverse engineering, and I can clearly see why. We just talked about how they cloned an entire console in the 90s. What I do know is that these cartridges are using FPGAs, just like the ones used in fancy designer clones, like the Analog NT. But that's a topic for another video. Let's actually pop in the Super Mario World repro I have here and talk about the fucking game. I'm sorry, that was a bit rude for no reason. Alright, so I have played the game intensively on real hardware and there's a lot of stuff to say about it. But first, I know some of you are gonna ask this question, so let's get this out of the way. There are other games in the multi-cart. Are any of those rare too? No, Super Mario World is the only real rarity here because the other games are either Normal Famicom games are really common bootlegs that you can find on $5 cartridges on AliExpress. So that's why I only wanted a repro for Super Mario World and its different versions and not the entire cartridge, because most of the other games there are really common. You can buy original copies of them on eBay for around $1 or $2. That said, let's talk about the fucking game. Oh, by the way, I'll do this and actually show you emulated footage because my capture card kinda sucks and I want to give you the best quality possible, and until I have enough money to buy something like a analog NT, I need to make do, okay? I'm just a small YouTuber, okay? The first question I make myself when I play some kind of Mario fun game or bootleg is, does this feel like Mario or it just looks like Mario? And in this case, this title does feel like Mario, somewhere in between Super Mario Bros. 3 and the original Super Mario World, but it has some issues. These are probably coding oversights, but they definitely impact the flow of the game. For example, when you jump, you immediately stop mid-air, which makes it way more difficult to just control Mario than any other real Mario title. The rest of the physics is actually pretty fine, but fucking this up really made this game feel janky. The other problem it has is that the slope speed is inverted, so you go faster up a slope and slower down one. And there's a reason I said these are probably coding oversights, because they are easily fixable by just using 3 Game Genie codes. So the code is not really broken, it's just, I don't know what happened here, but they f***ed this up. The spin jump and short hop are intact, but you now have to use a button combination to activate them since, well, you don't have enough buttons to use them normally. The spin jump, it doesn't really serve any purpose because you can't break spin blocks, they are just reskin normal blocks, so yeah, it's just there for show basically. Blocks in general work in a really weird way in this port because they usually don't have anything in them, not even coins, and the ones having power-ups are clearly outlined, so it's just weird. The coin counter also gives you a life every 101 coins instead of 100, and 1 every 6 dragon coins instead of 5, which makes them completely useless. You can't get a life using dragon coins because there aren't enough in any level. Not that you actually need more lives, because you start with 15 lives. 15! Which, I mean, makes sense if you consider they had to make up for the weird jumps and slopes, but in case you also want more lives, you can just go into a Yoshi house and get one. You don't get any message there, you just get in, there's a life for you, get out. And by the way, in the complete version, the first thing you see when you boot up the game is a level select, which makes sense since the cartridge has no battery. They had no budget for batteries in those bootlegs, so level select. It's easy, it's simple to program, you don't have to remember like 13 characters for a fucking password. In case you need any more lives than the 15 provided to you, you can always play the 1-up minigame, which you can access using the only working pipes in the game. Yeah, there's no secret areas. I mean, the cannon pipes also work, but they don't really lead you anywhere, so yeah. This is a Mario game without pipes, baby. And as you might have guessed, the level and map design have been slightly modified to accommodate for the NES hardware needs, but they are still pretty accurate to the 16-bit counterpart, so that's what matters. And by the way, do you remember when Nintendo said that Yoshi couldn't have been done on the 8-bit NES hardware? That was bullshit. That was fucking bullshit. And Mario's Missing already showed us that, while being a educational game.
Wait a minute, this game is educational.
Yoshi is here, it works perfectly, you can eat enemies using him, you can spit them back, everything works great, so Nintendo, quit your bullshit, I guess. Gameplay-wise, the game is what it looks like, a Famicom slightly broken version of Super Mario World. And this by itself is a big achievement for bootleg standards, because there are other bootleggers which try to replicate the look and feel of Super Mario World on way more powerful hardware, but only managed to do the former, with the game actually playing like shit. The graphics is a mixed bag of remade sprites looking like the Super Mario World ones and Super Mario Bros. 3 rips, with a bit of sprites taken from Kart Fighter 2. The Banzai bill has been totally removed from the graphics and replaced by 3 fireballs, probably not to clog up the Famicom's memory.
I need help.
Some of the sprites are also colored a bit weird, with Mario having weird fire colors, Red Paratroopas having green shells, and Bowser sporting the same color palette as the princess, so pink and yellow. I'm gonna paint my car like that. Overall, great job, honestly. Way more better than what some other bootleggers were doing at the time.
Hammer Chang in the studio like.
Yeah, this sounds like Mario. Drop it.
So, most of the music in this game sucks. But there's also some tracks that are faithful, kinda faithful. They are sometimes used in the wrong place, like this is what they put as the star music for some reason. But, well, allegedly, the Hammer team didn't have the money to actually access the consoles and original games they were copying full-time. According to a forum post I found about Somari, they, and by they I mean Hammer Chang, which I want you to remember, was working on other 2 games at the same time, listened to the game OST by phone and then had to remake it by memory later. I mean, if we consider that these are probably made by memory, this is great. I can't condemn them for like some slight off pitches. This is nuts. Hammer Chang, you're a fucking beast, dude. So by now you should be familiar with JY's logo, which according to Hammer Chang was made by the company's CEO himself. And this logo is actually hidden as an Easter egg in a lot of JY games, including Super Mario World, which has it in the background of some levels, but you can actually make it pop up full screen by pressing this combination of buttons when the game is paused. Just don't do it in the incomplete version or this will happen. Yeah. My 3-in-1 cartridge includes an improvement hack made by the Jabu, so let's talk about it. This hack updates the sprites and hard patches the physics codes, so you don't have to actually put them manually in. It also removes the level select completely, so if you want to play this, you either have to do it on an emulator or free up your weekend, prepare a lot of coffee and do it in one sitting. The OST is the same and it still sucks, but if someone can call me and make me listen to the athletic theme, I might be able to help. And this is all I have to say about Super Mario World for the Famicom. There are other stories to tell about the Hammer team and other games that can be analyzed, but those are stories for another day. For now, just know that if you're an NES enthusiast or just interested in bootleg titles, this game is pretty good. It's an interesting port and in my opinion you should check it out. And also, if you have lots of money, you could buy one of the original JY120 cartridges, but I wouldn't recommend it, just buy a repro. It's a bootleg card, please don't spend your money like that. I wanted to play this game on real hardware for years, literally years, and I have finally done it. This whole journey took me to discover an entire world of bootleg companies, hardware, a Polish Famicom mad scientist, and in the end, it led me to finally own, at least in repro form, a physical copy of one of my holy grails. And while bootlegs are usually the butt of jokes online, I think that remakes like this one really show how big this industry was and how far a motivated team can go, thanks to hard work, dedication, time, and blatant IP infringement. Alright, so I just want to take an unscripted minute to thank Nick Robinson for appearing in the video, Alex from LowSpecGamer for helping me out with the pacing of the video. Thank you guys, you really helped me out here. And I'm sorry if I made any mistakes with the Chinese in the video, like with the pronunciation, but I'm not Chinese, okay? So I tried doing my best. And also, I'm sorry if this took so long. but I had some issues during this month, so yeah. Did you know that only 1% of people called Mario are subscribed to Matcha? Okay, sorry.